Ah dear, this club, this football club. Hull City beaten 1-0 at Swansea, a result that leaves them just 2 points above the bottom three with 3 games to go. Let's cut to the chase. The game was decided by a really poor refereeing decision. A penalty was given 6 minutes into the second half against John Egan, and Jan Upotnik scored the goal. And from then on, you kind of had that feeling that as soon as City were 1-0 down, that they would go on and lose the game. They did recover. They played much better in that second half. They had, I think they had 11 shots, only hit the target with 3. And Matt Crooks was sent off in added time just to compound what has turned out to be a pretty horrific day. I mean, it didn't start great. The weather's nasty. It took an age to get here, and then Luton won at Derby in the early game. So it's been a day to forget. Look, let's not beat around the bush. In the first half, City were terrible. They were absolutely garbage. Probably the one saving grace was they got to half time at 0-0. Swansea were dominant, but never really looked like scoring in truth. Louis Coyle made one block after Pandor flapped a free kick into the penalty area. But for all Swansea's dominance, I think near enough 60%. I think they had 64% of the ball in the first half, but they didn't actually have a shot on target. But they were the more dominant force. Joe Allen and Lewis O'Brien in midfield. Ronald down the right hand side caused a real problem to Sean McLaughlin, so much so that Sean had to be taken off. I think 36 minutes in before he got sent off. We'll come to that in just a moment. But City were really poor in the first half. Really poor. Never got going. They had nothing up front. They couldn't string a pass together on probably more than one occasion, and it was just a really disappointing performance. But the saving grace was they got into half time at 0-0, which you always felt was important if they could do that. Give the manager a chance to regroup, maybe make a couple of changes, and then go again in the second half. If it carried on as it was, Swansea would have won the game at a canter. But look, ultimately, the game hinges on a decision. And look, before people accuse me of being biased towards Hull City and trying to stick up for what was a really awful performance in the first half, Harvey, I'll come on to team selection in a minute. Remind me if I forget, because I've got a brain like a sieve and I'm still a bit annoyed. Look, take nothing away. Hull City were garbage in that first half. Absolute garbage. It for me, watching it, looked like a team that were going to get relegated, because it was just they looked like rabbits in headlights. They particularly going forward, they had no control in midfield. Puerta was back in the team today at the expense of Alzate, who was not playing because he had a tight hamstring. So they were a bit concerned. I've got to listen back to Ruben. I asked Ruben about it, and he said that, it was either a tight hamstring or an ankle. I can't remember, so apologies, but so much has happened in the last hour or so. So, but I'll follow that up obviously later on. But basically, Alzate wasn't in the team because he'd got a minor injury, and so Puerta came back in. And him and Regan in the middle of midfield with Casey, they just couldn't get to grips with O'Brien. And funny enough, City have tried to sign him on a couple of occasions, but it's come down to wages. And when I think of some of the players that they've signed on big money that have offered absolutely nothing to this football club, Lewis O'Brien would have been a top signing, and probably one of the best signings they could have made at this level. But anyway, that's another conversation that we'll be having at the end of the season when we look back at whatever does eventually happen over the next 3 games. But look, they were terrible in the first half, but they did defend well. I thought, I thought Charlie Hughes and John Egan were really good in the defensive too. McLaughlin was booked after, I think, 3 minutes. I'm not sure it was a yellow. I mean, look, admittedly, we haven't got any tellies. We've got no replays here. It was on the far side in the rain. So, Ronald. I think it's Ronald that goes down. But for me, referee Bentona, who, by the way, I think he'd issued 167 yellow cards before today's game. As soon as Bentona gives that yellow card, 3 minutes in, he makes a rod for his own back. He really does. So he books McLaughlin, and then a bit later on, after I think it was about half an hour-ish into the game, obviously Swansea know he's on a yellow card. They try and get the ball out to Ronald and Josh Key down the right hand side as much as possible, and they attack him. There's another moment where he gives away a free kick, which I'm not even convinced it was a free kick. And then all the Swansea players and the fans are sold out home crowd, by the way, here today. Tickets are only £14.50, but fair play. They created a good noise. They're all baying for a second yellow card. That doesn't come because you're thinking, Christ, it's Bristol City all over again, albeit without the goal. They're going to go down to 10 men. That's a disaster. Eventually, but Cody Drame's warming up. It takes a few minutes. They bring Cody Drame at left back, and Maka gets replaced, gets dogs abuse from the home fans as he has to walk from the far side all the way around. But I felt for Maka in truth, because he'd been done by two bits of skill. But as I say, I'm not convinced either were fouls. But he got booked and they had to take him off before he got sent off. Matt Crooks, incidentally, did get sent off in added time for two yellow cards, which I think both were probably yellow cards. But I just thought the referee was garbage all the way through for both teams, in fairness. I thought he was inconsistent. And as I say, when you start, on a day like today, when it's chucking down the rain, the pitch is slippy, when you start brandishing yellow cards in the first couple of minutes, you're making a rob for your own bag. He never had control of it. And the penalty is... the penalty is just a terrible decision. What's frustrating about the penalty is, Egan, it clearly hits him in the face. His arm's up, yes, because that's a natural motion, but it doesn't hit him. His arm, it hits him smack in the face, and he doesn't give the referee. The referee doesn't give the decision himself straight away. There's a momentary pause. Well, there's what felt like an eternity of a pause. Obviously, the crowd are up for it. The crowd are baying for a penalty. The Swansea players are baying for a penalty, and it looks like eventually the linesman on this side gives the penalty, but the referee's not sure about it. And then I've just spoken to John Egan, and he said, "Look, I went to the referee, said it's not a penalty. It hit me in the face. Go and speak to go and speak to your linesman." And the referee didn't do that. Egan's obviously not very happy at all. And they score. And it sounds harsh, doesn't it? Because we've been critical of City for the amount of goals they've conceded early in the second half so many times this season. That's another one they've conceded today. That's now 4 in the last 5 games where they've conceded in the first 10 minutes of the second half. But it's hard. It's hard to be. Let's part the first half performance because we know that was rubbish, right? Yeah, defensively they defended fairly well, but the managers agreed with me when I said they weren't good enough. They weren't good enough in that first half. As a performance, it was terrible. But they're in the game at 0-0, and they're in the game thinking, actually, if we improve second half, we've got players like Amrabat, Crooks, Kamara, maybe Burstow or Joseph that can come off the bench and make an impact. We could maybe nick the game 1-0 like we did at Hillsborough. But the fact is that goal changes, and I take all the criticism aimed at the manager, the players, and there was a lot of criticism, by the way, at the end of the game from the 700 or so that have journeyed down here today. And I've been myself on away terraces, having watched my team struggling and trying to avoid relegation and turning bad performances. I've been there, so I know how it feels. But it's really hard to lambast them too much because they've lost to a god-awful decision. Yes, we can debate, did they do enough after that? I thought after that goal went in, they had a real go. As the half wore on, they were putting balls in the box. The changes did make a difference. Crooks had a header that was saved. Charlie Hughes had a header that was well saved. Who else? Gelhardt had a shot in injury time. So they did create moments. Did they create enough of them? Probably not. They had 11 shots, 3 on target. Is that enough away from home? Probably not. But we know this is a team that don't create many chances, and they score even less. So I think, they did respond second half. But I can't get away from the fact that they've been done by a decision. If they may well have gone on. Look, who knows? If that decision doesn't happen and it's 0-0, they may well go and lose the game 1-0 anyway. We don't know. But that and Darren absolutely, the performance didn't deserve a point. Swansea were the better team today. I don't disagree, but what we can't get away from, and as I say, we can hammer them all day long. We can criticise the manager for his tactics. We can criticise the players, but ultimately the game has been decided by an absolutely disastrous decision, and they may well have got away with a point here. And suddenly you come away from here with a 0-0, given results elsewhere, and Luton win, but Plymouth have lost. Cardiff, as we speak, are losing at Sheffield United. That's not. You say that's not a bad point, and you've got the opportunity to get 4 points from this weekend, which I think we'd have all taken. And you get back on for them, the bus to the airport and the flight home. You guys back in the car and wherever you're going, you go. That's not a bad point away at a team that are really in form. But So I just come back to the point that they've been absolutely shafted by a really bad decision. I'm just looking at. Yeah, but Danny, the changes did make a difference, and I think there's a case for starting Kamara. But I think if he'd have started Amrabat, I think people would have criticised him. He started Crooks at Watford, and he wasn't in the game. So I always think it's easy in hindsight to go, well, actually, he should have done this or he should have done that. But let's look at the facts. Amrabat's 39. I think if he'd have started, there would have been a lot of people criticising him. I'd agree with. I probably would have started Kamara, and I think he's got to start Kamara on Monday. But I wouldn't have started Matt Crooks because I don't think Matt Crooks has done enough. And he's come off the bench and got sent off, so he's out of the equation anyway for Monday. And he's got to be. Somebody said it further up. You know, he's experienced. He's got to be a bit cuter. Both yellow cards were silly free kicks to give away. He didn't need to do either of them. And he's picked up 2 yellow cards. He's now not involved on Monday night. Monday afternoon. So in terms of his changes, as I've already said, he couldn't start. Alzati wasn't fit enough to start, so he started Puerta. Who offered in fairness, who offered very little, and they're going to have to pay £3 million for Gustavo Puerta. And while I think there's a player there, I don't think there's a £3 million player there from what I've seen at times this season. In that game today, they needed their midfield to graft, to get on the ball and wrestle the initiative back from Alan and Lewis O'Brien. And they just didn't do it. They were better in the second half, but first half when they needed to. Swansea were always going to come out all guns blazing. They're in great form. They're at home. They've got a sold-out crowd behind them. They were always going to come out the first 15, 20 minutes and have a real go. And City just needed to sit in, be compact, tight. And when the ball goes up to Palmer, to Gauhart, to João Pedro, keep the ball and get them, get up the pitch. Give them something to get up the pitch with. It never happened. They just every time they cleared it to halfway, it just kept coming back. And basically, Swansea could defend pretty much on the halfway line because there was never any threat behind. And when they got on the ball, they were just rubbish. They couldn't control it. They couldn't pass it. It was spinning off them and going back to Swansea players. But as I say, they were rubbish in the first half. But you go, okay, they're at 0-0. But look, it's days like today where you do wonder is the writing on the wall, where they've come away from home. They've not played well. They've got beaten to an absolute shocker of a decision. They've lost 1-0. They've got 3 games to go. They've got to. That game on Monday is absolutely massive, and it looks like with the way we are going to be going to Portsmouth needing something to stay in the division. The best case scenario is that Cardiff, as they are losing right now, unless it's changed, Sheffield United lose, and then it's all to play for, isn't it? On Easter Monday, it's still in their hands somehow. But they've got to find. I want to see more. And we were talking about this in the game, and it'd be interesting to know what you guys think. That I want to see a team come out and be positive and play with kind of verve and express themselves. But perhaps that's expecting too much of a team now that are 3 games from potentially being relegated, and it is just a case of trying to be tight, be compact, and play for a moment, play for a set play, or try and keep it at 0-0 for as long as possible, and then spring a counter-attack, or as I say, create a moment from Gauhart or Crooks, not that he's playing now, but or Casey Palmer. But I look at that first half performance, and I think, and it's not a one-off. If you think back in the last few weeks, they've been really poor. They were awful at Watford. They were awful. They were okay against Luton in the first half, but never recovered after the goal, so were awful in the second half. Thought they were okay against Coventry, but the Coventry were much the better team. But they had 2 massive moments in the Coventry game. Casey and Louis should have both scored. Then perhaps it's a different game. But they just, even at West Brom, they they fought back and got a point. But in the first half, they were so outplayed, and maybe that's just where they are. Maybe because they're at the bottom of the table, they are. They are where they deserve to be. I don't think anybody can deny that. After 43 games of a season, you are where you deserve to be. So maybe Stephen, in terms of how many points, how long's a piece of string? And I don't know. I genuinely I don't know what it's going to take. Cardiff, if they lose, remain behind them. Luton are now only 2 points behind them. They've got a better goal difference than Cardiff and Luton. Plymouth are gone, for me, out of it now. But they've got to find a win. They've got 3 games left. They've got to find a win. 4 points gets them to 49 points. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. I mean, Luton have won again today, so that raises the bar again. I still think 4 points might be enough. I genuinely, hand on heart, I've got no idea. What I do know, and what I have got an idea on, is they've got to beat Preston. That is the one game in the next 3 you've got to look at and go, first and foremost, you've got to beat Preston. Then you've got Derby at home. I mean, that's going to be a horrible, horrible game. At least it'll be played on a decent pitch, because their pitch is an absolute disgrace. It looks like the baseball ground, the state of that pitch today, and it simply didn't do Derby any favours. So that's that. Look, it's to coin a phrase by Fergie, it's squeaky bum time, isn't it? Because they just can't. This team are incapable of backing up results. Again, they get a decent result in midweek against Coventry. They don't back it up today, and the penalty decision is a shocker. But go and get something out of the game. Lee, I'm interested to see what you're saying. The fans, I understand, as I say, Lee, I understand the frustration at the end. I get it. I've been there. I know how it feels to be particularly stood in the rain a long way from home and seeing that. But I think that, look, there's going to be a massive post-mortem irrespective of what happens, whether they stay up or they go down at the end of the season. But I would say in the next 3 games, the players need the supporters. They really do. The MKM Stadium on Monday has got to be raucous. The fans have got to be right behind them, because they need. This club needs every inch it can get, every little advantage it can get in its favour to stay in this division, and the fans can play a huge part. And they can again on Monday. They've got to. It's going to be. It's of no use booing the players. Monday. In the first half. No use jeering them, because that's not going to help the situation. We all want the same thing. We all want the club to stay in the division, and the fans need to put all their anger, their anger at the owner for sacking Liam Rosenior. You look back a year, they've got a chance of going in the top 6. Fast forward, the club's been completely ripped to pieces. But park all that anger, all that frustration for whatever happens at the end of the season. We've got to. Everybody needs to be behind the players going into that final game. Let's see what. Harry, you make a fair point. Harry says if we'd have lost against Cov and got a point here, there wouldn't be so much hysteria. I get it. I get that. I don't think there needs to be over hysteria today. I think today needs to be put in a bit of context that Swansea are always good at home. They're on a great run. They've now won 4 in a row, 5 in a row. And they've won the game because of a dodgy penalty. As I say, who knows what would have happened after that? It's ifs, buts and maybes. But the cold, hard facts of the case are that the penalty was given, and it should never, in a million years, be a penalty. And the referee's had a shocker. They may, as I say, hindsight's wonderful. They may well have gone and lost the game. They could have won the game. We don't know what would have happened had that penalty have not happened. So it was crucial. No matter how you dress it up, whether you're absolutely incandescent with rage at the performance today, the defeat, or whether you're kind of like, it is what it is. The fact of the matter is, you have to understand, we have to accept that that decision has cost them the game. It is so important. Let's see what else we've got saying. Richard, I'm with you on Galhart. He's got to play in the middle. Danny, sorry if I'm talking nonsense. I'm just saying it as I see it. I've said they were rubbish in the first half. I thought they were much better in the second half. Game's been decided by a really bad decision. Goalkeeper's not had how many saves has Pandor had to make? Swansea were the better team. They are a better team. Got a couple of better players in midfield. If I'm talking nonsense, fine. That's your call. David, in terms of going up or staying down, I'd love to sit here and say I think they're going to stay up. I just don't know. I genuinely don't know. They don't score any goals. They don't look like scoring goals. And that for me is a massive red flag. So I'm going to sit on the fence and say 50-50 at this stage. Ask me after Monday, but I think it's going to be really tight. Luton had that massive setback against Blackburn, and I thought that might be them done. But they've gone to Derby, they've battened down the hatches, and they've won by a goal to nil. They came to City with awful but they've won a game 1-0. City were awful at Sheffield Wednesday. Let's not forget that. They were awful at Sheffield Wednesday, but they won the game 1-0. They've got to find a way of doing that against Preston, and they've got to find a way of doing that against Derby. And if they win the 2 home games, they're going to survive. They will survive if they win their 2 home games. But the body of work we've seen so far at home suggests that isn't going to happen. They've not won 2 games in a row since, and we keep talking about it, way back in September. If they'd have won these 2 games over Easter, they'd be safe. But they've lost the first one. Now, if they go and win against Preston, the picture will look better. But they've got to do it. It's easy us talking about it, which is ultimately what we're paid to do. But it's all right us speculating and going, well, they can do this, they can do that, they've done this, they've done that. But they've got to go and do it. They've got to go and win a game. They're going to have to win a game. They're not. I don't see them surviving without winning one of these 3 games, because, I just don't see how that happens. I think Luton will pick up points. West Brom, we're going to have a massive say because they've got to play all 3 teams in the final 3 games, but they've lost at Coventry. So is that West Brom out of the picture for the playoffs? So ultimately they've got to grasp it, and we can say, you can rely on other results to your blue in the face. You can rely on West Brom picking up wins against Luton, Derby and Cardiff. You can rely on Sheffield United beating Cardiff tonight. But ultimately, Hull City have got to find a win from somewhere. They've not looked like it in the last 3 weeks, in the last 3 or 4 games since what have we had since Hillsborough? They went to Watford and lost. They obviously drew against Coventry. They've got to find a way of winning a game from somewhere. They've been able to do it. They've not done it consistently back to back, but they've been able to lose a game, win a game, lose a game, win a game. While they've drawn a game, they've lost a game, they've drawn a game, they've lost a game. They've now got to go and win a game, and ultimately they've got to do it because it's survival on the line, isn't it? I think, Steve, the urgency thing is I would agree with. There was no urgency in that first half. It was limp. I agree with that. I'm just scrolling through. Harry, I agree about Gowhart. I don't know why he's playing him out wide. It blows my mind. On Monday, it's going to be a very physical battle against Preston, but I'd be going Kamari down one side, Carl Joseph down the other, and Gowhart in the 10. Take Casey Palmer out, give him a rest, save Palmer for your impact player off the bench and Lincoln. Get Gowhart in the 10. Yeah, I agree, Harry, about Palmer. Let's just quickly scroll through. Darren, agree about Pedro. He's offered absolutely nothing. Yeah, completely agree with you about that. No complaints. Tom, in terms of the next win, it's got to come on Monday. Simple as that, isn't it? If you don't, Preston are where they are. I think if you'd have said to everybody you've got to beat Preston to stay in the division, you'd probably take that. With respect to Preston, they're a good side, physical, strong. I'd be worried if it was at Deepdale. I think they've got a better chance of beating them at home, but as I say, I don't have any faith that they can win home games. I genuinely don't believe. I don't look at that team and think they can win a home game. I hope I'm wrong. I feel that they're more equipped to play away, but then, since the international break, they've collectively been a shambles. I think, yes, they won at Hillsborough, and all credit for Charlie scoring that goal. But I think if you look at the performances since the international break, they've been nowhere near good enough. The points reflect that. So they've got to find it from somewhere. Harry, in terms of the shackles, yeah, but he's also got to be careful, hasn't he, that he doesn't open it up too much and they're 2-0 down after 10 minutes, like they were at Burnley, and get cut apart and the game's gone. So I do understand that he's trying to be pragmatic in the sense of trying to keep in the game for as long as possible. But also, it's easy to criticise the manager, and he deserves. He's the manager, so ultimately he carries the can. But the players have got to do more. The players have got to. The players are the ones out there. The players are the ones that can't pass to each other, that are playing the ball into each other and it's spinning off them going out for a throw-in, that they can't get up the pitch. It's not always tactical. Sometimes players have got to take a bit of responsibility, to be brave. You've got yourselves into this mess. Yes, we can talk about the owner and his decision to sack Liam and bring in Tim. We can talk about elements of the recruitment that have been chaotic, elements that have been okay. There's so many different parts of it, but ultimately 11 players are going out there. For me, they've got to play better. They've got to perform better. the start of the second half. There's nothing tactical in starting the second half slowly. It's not like, and we talk about this every single week, and I'm getting bored of it. I'm sure you're getting bored of listening to it. There's nothing tactical in terms of what they're doing at the start of the second half. Just get on the ball, go forward, play it forward. Instead of like, when you're trying to clear it, instead of panicking and doing something that I'd expect a 4-year-old to do, and slicing it here, there and everywhere, not being able to kick it, like we saw at times at the start of the second half again, put your foot through it. It's not rocket science. These are elite level footballers. I would expect to be making some better decisions at the start of second half, and then the penalty is a disgrace. But before that, ample opportunity again to get rid of the ball, to make sure that the shot doesn't actually come in the first place. And I just think players have got to make better decisions. But ultimately, you know, does the manager need to reduce the shackles? It's a balancing act, isn't it? Because if he comes out and he goes, if he plays 5 attackers and goes 4-3-3 gung-ho, and they're 3-0 down after 10 minutes, everyone's going, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you being pragmatic? We're in the bottom 4 or 5. You know, we're fighting for survival. Why aren't we trying to keep it tight and play for corner, play for set play, or on the counter, like we saw at Sheffield United, like we saw at Sunderland? So, look, it's a balancing act, and it's a really difficult one, and let's not pretend it isn't. Let's quickly see, because they're going to be kicking me out in a minute. Harry, yeah, I know we throw it around that teams are on the beach, they've got nothing to play for. Every professional footballer's got something to play for, because they're playing for the people that are buying tickets. Whether it's Hull City, you know, Preston will have 1,000 fans, 500,000 fans coming to the MKM on Monday, and God knows how many fans. They're also professional footballers. They don't toss it off. You know, they want to win. They might not be able to go up. They might not be going down. They might not have, in terms of league positions, in terms of promotion, relegation, anything to play for. They've got everything to play for. Pride. Some of them will be playing for contracts. Some of them will be playing for potential transfers in the summer. You know, and some of them will want to be playing to be in the team next week, and then when the season starts under Heckingbottom in the summer. So every player at this stage of the season has got something to play for. The benefit for City is, you know, Preston are inherently beatable, and that's what they've got to do. They've got to go and beat them. And nothing else for me is a point is no good. I don't think it might be in terms of, but then you rely on other results, and then it's still, even a point rolls it to Derby. You go and win. You take control of the situation. You go and win your home game against Preston, and you could be, you know, you're dancing in the aisles. If results go your way, you could be fine. If results go your way on Monday and you win your game, suddenly you're 5 points clear with goal difference going into the final 2 games. Well, that's a very strong position to be in. But who was it? Yeah, Tom, the next 2 home games. They've got two home games to survive. That's basically the situation. Is win your 2 home games, you're in the Championship next season. Lose the 2, you're probably in League One. That is the reality of the situation. Yeah, Steve, don't disagree. Danny, again, I think I've covered that in terms of trying to be pragmatic. Yeah, Harry, you've got to worry. I think if you're in this position with 3 games to go, you've got to worry. Can't panic, and the players and the staff need to remain calm, because they've got to focus on. They can't get caught up in the hysteria and everything that surrounds this. Understandably, they've got to be single-minded. We've got a job to do. We've got to go out and beat Preston. We go out and beat Preston. We're halfway there. Go out and beat Derby. You've done it. That's it. Louise, in terms of Louis Barry, they're hoping that he'll be back at the start of the week, so that's one to keep an eye on. Steve, I'm not sure they need. Look, we joke about it, but look, I just don't think they've got the quality, and I disagree with what Ruben said in the media about he thinks they've got the quality. Conversely, he can't come out and go, actually, lads, I think my team are a bag of nails. I think they're an absolute shower of you know what. I wouldn't be surprised if they get relegated. I want to get rid of them all in the summer. If he comes out and says that, well, the writing's on the wall. He's got to try and big his players up, because they listen to everything, they read everything, and he's got to really promote them, because he needs to get 3 results from them, doesn't he? So, yeah. Steve, agreed on Harry Vaughan. I'd have him in the squad. I think he's a better option than what we've seen at times from Carl Joseph in attacking sense, and Mason Burstow as well. I don't think, but Burstow came on with 10 minutes to go. He touched the ball in his own half. I don't think he did anything else. Clearly a player that's finding it difficult. Harry, 3 points keeps up maybe. Stephen, on the basis of what we've seen so far, no, I don't see him winning any of the 3 games. But this is Hull City, this is the Championship. You just never know. Maybe on Monday they get a decision that goes their way and they get a penalty. I mean, the chance would be a fine thing, wouldn't it? Let's be honest. I can't remember the last penalty they had. But yeah, I mean, maybe they always say the luck evens itself out. Well, they had some terrible luck against Luton. They had terrible luck against Coventry, but it evened itself out because Abu scored with a bit of luck. They've had nothing here today. Hopefully on Monday they get a slice that goes their way. Let's see what... Yeah, Patrick, I can understand your frustration. If I'd have travelled all the way down, well, I did, but if I'd have travelled and paid to be here as a supporter, I'd be miffed as well. And look, it's frustrating. You know, this time a year ago, we were all buzzing, weren't we? Buzzing. We all thought there was we were frustrated with elements of what we were watching, particularly at home, but we were going into the final couple of games believing that this team could get in the playoffs, and it was at least it was challenging at the right end of the table. There was every reason to be optimistic and positive about the future, and then it's unravelled massively. You know, basically a wrecking ball has been thrust into the football club, and it's struggling now, and it will continue to. Let's have a look. Yeah, Lee, not consistent on the 4 season. That is true. That's why they are where they are. Harry Alzate, to repeat, has got a knock. That's why he didn't play, but was on the bench. Let's just quickly, because I'm getting the nod. Danny, I don't disagree again. But again, I don't know how much of it is down to tactics and how much of it is just a fear. You know, they're in this situation. They know that they're playing for the future of the football club, that if this club gets relegated, it could be in all kinds of trouble. So we don't know. Naturally, when you're at this stage of the season and you're struggling, you're not used to winning games, you have problems. I've got to be quick because I'm getting a nod to crack on. Right, I'm going to call it a day there, everybody, because I know it's getting late and time's ticking by there when I close the stadium. Thanks, everybody, for all your comments, as always. Look, chin up. It's Easter Sunday on Sunday. Have some hot cross buns. Don't just have one. Have 2 hot cross buns with plenty of butter, and then smash 5 Easter eggs. And if you're into your alcohol, have an extra beer. If you're not, probably have 2 extra Easter eggs. That's what I'm going to do. So, look, they're still alive. I know it's grim. It's grim, if not grimmer than the weather here in Swansea. If you're driving back tonight, have a safe trip back to East Yorkshire. Turn up on Monday, give it, as you always do, give it your all, because it's not over yet. I know it feels like it is. It's not over yet. There's 9 points. 2 wins does it. How are they going to get them? I've got no idea. Am I confident? I'd love to say I would be. I'm not, but you never know. Football is funny. Anybody that watched that Man United game last night against Lyon, you just never, always expect the unexpected. And I think if a lot of fans are expecting it to go bent and to be playing in League One next year, maybe they might surprise you. Maybe they might just turn out with when they just in the nick of time. We've written them off. We're not. There's a lot of you that don't believe in them, but maybe, just maybe, they might turn out with 2 home wins. Am I being optimistic? What else have we got? Got to be optimistic. Got to try and look at the light in the darkness, especially on a day like today when everything's gone wrong for them. Sending off, never a penalty, and in truth, terrible first half performance. But anyway, right, that's it from me here in South Wales. We've not enjoyed our trips to South Wales so far in 2024. Let's hope we get to come back to Swansea before the year ends, and we can give them one and owe them. Everybody, try and have a good weekend. Have a happy Easter if it's something that you celebrate. And we'll pick this up from the MKM Stadium on Monday. Up the time.